Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing another Overwatch League 2021 roster breakdown. Today we'll be taking a look at the Los Angeles Gladiators. If you are wondering why you're not talking about the LA Valiant, they finished ahead of the LA Gladiators. If you recall, there have been these rumors about the LA Valiant recently and the team going through some major changes, being sold and having players dropped and whatnot. So because of that, I am going to wait until we see what actually happens with the Valiant, until we find out exactly what is going on with them as a team. So for the time being, we're going to skip over them and we're just going to continue on today with the LA Gladiators, who finished the season in the 9 seed, an 11-10 record with a +4 differential. Somewhat disappointing team last season. They finished top 5 in both of the first 2 seasons. Made some pretty major changes going into 2020, and it seems like most of them didn't pay off. Now, late in the season, they actually looked decent. A DPS lineup had kind of started to feel like it was playing a little better, but they definitely had some problems with their support line all season, and OG, the main tank position, was having some issues. So as they move into 2021, they have made some more changes, and we are going to see a roster that has some different looks going forward. Let's start with the tank line. I also should note before we actually get started, I'm recording this video a little bit earlier than I usually do, so there could be some changes between when I'm recording this video and when it goes up, and this could also be true, of course, with the LA Valiant as well. We could have more news about them by the time this video goes up. So just want everyone to know that, so that it's not something that surprises people in the event that it happens. Anyway, let's talk about this LA Gladiators tank line. For main tank, they have a rookie main tank. It is Muse, a Korean main tank who most recently majorly, well-known, played for Eternal Academy. He also was on loan to World GameStar Phoenix, as well as 200 milliseconds or 200 ms, which were not really like a major team. It was just kind of a bunch of players they had. But he was with Eternal Academy basically this whole time, on loan to a bunch of different teams. But Muse comes in as the new main tank for this team. He has a very diverse hero pool. He can play all 4 of the main tanks at a pretty high level. He's a pretty good player to look at. Obviously, there were rumors of him joining the Florida Mayhem earlier this season. Those obviously didn't happen, as he joined the LA Gladiators instead. Very interesting player, Muse. Someone who I definitely think will be interesting to watch, as the only... well, there's 2 rookies on this team, but he is the big one of the rookies on this team, definitely. He is a starter, and he is their only main tank, so you have to hope that Muse performs well, because if he is unable to perform well, you're going to run into a lot of difficulties, and you're going to have some struggles finding success if your main tank player can't really get anything done. So one of the most interesting players to be on the lookout for, Muse here. I think his performance is very important because of how much OG kind of struggled with consistency last season. I know that the reports are that there was still interest in OG from the Gladiators. They were still interested in bringing him in and having him as one of their players. But they ultimately didn't bring him back because OG decided to go a different direction. So Muse is a very interesting main tank to bring in as a replacement. You need somebody who's more consistent just based on what types of performances they got out of OG last season. And when you have some really good main tanks in the league, and you're in a region in North America that has some very good main tanks, you have to go up against the likes of Mag and Smurf and Super and Fearless. Some really good names in North America. You have to be able to stand up and contend with a lot of the really top level main tanks. So it will definitely be interesting to see what Muse is able to do. but I think I would expect some pretty good things from him because I think he is a very good player and someone who I expect to find some success. His partner in the tank line, of course, is Space, the American off-tank player, arguably the best non-Korean off-tank in the world. I don't even know if it is arguable. He is, in my opinion, the best, and I don't really know if there's anybody else you could really argue otherwise. Definitely a very, very, very good tank line here, with the big question mark being Muse, whether or not he is able to really succeed. Has a ton of weight and determines how well this Gladiators team can perform. But I think when you have a veteran player like Space, who has made tons of plays, who's been very good his entire career in the Overwatch League, you get a lot of upside to that. And I think Space is one of my favorite off-tanks to watch. I think he's very good. He's performed at a very high level consistently. So all in all, I would say that this is a very good tank line. Muse is the question mark, but Space, someone we don't need to really praise. We all know how good he is. And I would... I think he is somebody who definitely has proven to be a very strong competitor, and he is somebody who has been one of the most consistent players that is on this this Gladiators roster right now. So he brings a lot to help Muse get into the league and to kind of adapt and adjust to being in the Overwatch League. So definitely my eyes on that duo there, but one of the most interesting players, in my opinion, in Space. Moving on to the support line, this is where they put most, I would say, of their money this offseason. They have brought in some big names to bolster their support line, and that is the thing that I think will help elevate them to potentially be title contenders for 2021. The big name, of course, is their new main support, Moth, two-time Overwatch League champion with the San Francisco Shock. He said on the Dustin Bowerman show that he wouldn't have joined the LA Gladiators if he didn't feel confident in their ability to win the Overwatch League. And I think you have to really take that pretty well to take a lot at the heart. I think this is a roster with a lot of talent. And with Moth as presumably the leader of this team, obviously he has experience playing with Space on Team USA. So you have that synergy there. So that's something that you have going on. He also has some synergy with the flex support player Shu, who we'll talk about here in a second. So you have some pre-existing synergy already, some players who've already played together in the past in different ways and some different areas. And I think that Moth is really the biggest addition to this team this offseason. As good as I think Muse can be, and as much as he brings to the table, Moth is that consistent main support player who has been at the top of the Overwatch League game for a while now. He's a leader. He understands the game very well. So what he brings to this Gladiators roster is very impressive play and very impressive performances that will really help elevate this team. And when you pair him with Shu, formerly of the Guangzhou Charge, who played with Moth on Toronto Esports back in 2018, you have a very, very good team. Granted, they didn't play for much. I should note they didn't play a ton of time together on Toronto Esports. They were literally together for like 10 days, but still. There's something there at least. But I digress. Shu is very good, and I think Shu is one of the best flex supports that kind of went a little under the radar. I think by the end of this past season, a lot of people realized how good Shu was. I don't think he was kind of this under-the-radar flex support anymore, but even in 2019, I thought he was really good, but he was on a team that wasn't that great. But come 2020, the Guangzhou Charge start doing much better. Shu becomes a player that everybody really recognizes how good he is. And so you pair him with Moth to make a very solid support line that can play pretty much anything. You know, Moth gives you your really good Lucio, a good Mercy. He can play the break, he can play the bat. Shu's going to give you your Zen and your Ana. He's also got a pretty good BAP, and he can play some of that Moira at a high level. And then you throw in Skewed as an additional flex support player, so if you do need a double flex support composition for whatever reason, if you need Zen Ana or something, you know, you can have it. Or if maybe Skewed is just really good on the Ana, even better than Shu is. You know, that happens sometimes. Sometimes you have a player who's just slightly better at a different flex support hero. I would expect it to be Moth and Shu for the most part, but Skewed is the other rookie on this team coming from Oz Gaming, which of course talked about Oz Gaming with the NYXL and the Florida Mayhem, both of those teams bringing in players from this interesting team. So it's something that I think is really strong for this roster is what they have brought to their support line. Their support line is so important to the success of this team, and when you bring in big name players like Moth and Shu to play alongside each other, you bring in a rookie like Skewed who can learn and also can provide in those situations where you need the double flex support, or if there's a very specific meta where Skewed's play style just works better. That helps this roster out a ton in reaching new heights and being a team that is able to compete at a high level against the likes of the San Francisco Shock, the Dallas Fuel, the Washington Justice, some of these NA teams that are looking really good right now, that look like they have really talented rosters. These are the types of players that you need to see have big results. They need to come up big when the going gets tough, and I think that is where this support line is very important. I think they are the backbone to this team, and they're the most important part of this team. If they succeed, this Gladiators, the rest of the team could be pretty mediocre, but if those two players, Moth and Shu, are performing at a high level, the Gladiators are still going to be a tough team to beat, because it's very difficult to beat somebody like Moth who's just that good. And so it's very very interesting lineup they have in their back line, and one that I'm convinced is arguably the best in the league. So definitely keep an eye out for them going forward. Let's take a look finally at their DPS lineup. This team has 3 DPS players, and it is 3 that they had last season. No real change to their lineup there. Birdring, their hitscan player. Resurgent year last season, one of the top hitscan players last season. Even I was not expecting that level of performance from Birdring. Played at a very high level, so somebody who is a grand finals winner back in 2018. Now he's back. He has come out to a much higher level than even he was ever on the London Spitfire, honestly. He had some pretty high performances on London Spitfire, but I thought he was better this past season on the Gladiators than he was ever on the Spitfire. So a really good season for Birdring last season. You would assume he can probably keep that up. If you can have some down years and come back at that high of a level consistently, I have faith in you as a player to do it again when you've had some down years like that, but you're able to bounce back. So I think Birdring does bring a lot of really good hit scan performance to the table. You pair that with Kevster, I think, who's going to be their primary flex DPS player. The mystery man, the man with no face. We've never seen a picture of Kevster ever. Don't even try to look for a picture of Kevster and think you'll find one, because trust me, I've tried. None exist. So it is what it is. Kevster, of course, joining this team last season, somewhat late in the season. Joined the team in June after some pretty dominant runs and contenders with Team Envy and Team Doge. And Kevster was very good. I actually thought he brought a ton to the table, especially when you consider the fact that he was playing on 200 ping. He was very good. I thought he was the big difference maker for this Gladiators team, turning their season around and being able to find more consistent play. Because while I do think that a large portion of the problems that this team ran into last season were from the somewhat inconsistent play of OG, it was made worse by the fact that their DPS lineup was not performing at the level that they needed it to. Jaru and Mirror just were not pulling their weight in the same way. And while Mirror is still on this team and still has a very specific role on this team, which I think is important, he's more of a specialist, right? He's very good on the Doomfist, right? And he brings a very good Zarya in the event that you need a really strong Zarya play. He also, I think, played Brig for them at times last season. He plays some Junkrat. He plays some Genji. He has a very specific hero pool. So there is a role on this roster for Mirror. And Mirror is someone you need to have for some of that kind of specialist role, flexible play. It's very important for that. But I thought Kevster was overall the stronger, more consistent player who brought a ton more to this team. And so I'm very interested in seeing what Kevster is able to do. Hopefully now, not on 200 ping. Hopefully Kevster will be in LA with the rest of this team, competing in North America on North American servers. I think it'll be a huge boost to this team to have him with the rest of the team. And so I'm excited to see that. And I expect Birdring to be their main starter alongside Kevster, with Mirror coming in just for, kind of specific metas where they need his play. Because his Zarya last season was very good. It is one of his best heroes. It's one of the things that he's kind of known for because of the amount that he has to play back in Goats. When you play a lot of Goats Zarya, you end up being a pretty decent Zarya. So that is something that we could see from him. And I also think it'll be interesting to see if he pulls out Doomfist at all. Doomfist is not usually meta. When you play like at the highest level, Doomfist is pretty bad. All things considered, he doesn't usually become meta. So it'll be interesting to see if we do see any Mirror playtime this season. Something I'm certainly keeping my eyes out for, because I think it would be good to see him performing at a pretty high level. So that is certainly something that I am hoping for and looking for. And I think there's a good chance that we see some Doomfist play at some point, potentially, but at this point in time, who knows exactly what the meta is going to be. It's always up in the air at this point. But yeah, that's this roster. In terms of my thoughts on this roster, this team, if you didn't see back, how long ago was that now? It was several months ago at this point. They competed in the Valiant Winter Ball. And the Valiant Winter Ball was an invitation tournament. There were 4 teams there. It was the Gladiators, the Reign, the Valiant, and the Mayhem. And this happened back in December. And the LA Gladiators were victorious in that tournament. They 3-0'd the Florida Mayhem, 3-1 the Atlanta Reign, and then 3-0 the Atlanta Reign again in the grand finals. And I think it's pretty important to note this, because while I don't think it's the end-all be-all, they did well, okay, big deal, but they were very dominant as a team that had barely had any practice playing. They'd barely scrimmed together, they'd barely done work playing together. So this is a team that with one scrim together had managed to beat the Florida Mayhem, who I think are a very talented roster, and they're a very good roster, and the Atlanta Reign, who, while I don't think they were always playing at their best, and I think there are still some holes and some questions about that Atlanta Reign roster, Pelican was really good throughout the series, and still was unable to really stop the LA Gladiators. This is a very good team. I genuinely think when you look at the top teams in North America, I think a lot of people are going to look at North America and they're going to be like, well, obviously we know the Shock are the best team in North America. They're the team that are 2-time defending champions. They're going to be at the top always. Everybody knows that. Then a lot of people say, well, you also have the Florida Mayhem, who are really good. They were good last season. They're going to be contenders again. People are throwing out the Dallas Fuel because of the all the Element Mystic players they have. And while they might not be really good right away, as the season progresses, they're going to be better. And then, of course, people are looking at the Washington Justice because they've made a ton of moves to improve their roster as well. And they're a team that are looking to be one of the top teams as well with the moves they've made. And so I think a lot of people look at those teams as teams that are going to be trying to compete with the Shock. Well, I think they are. I don't think any of those teams are better than the Gladiators right now. I think that of all the teams in North America, with the exception of the San Francisco Shock, the LA Gladiators are the best team in North America. They have the arguably best tank line of all of those teams. Now, there's some very good tank lines. Washington's is very good, of course, with Mag and Fury, and then you have a good tank line in Paris, or not in Paris, in Dallas. Support line wise, once again, you kind of go like, well, you got a really good support line down in Florida with Slime and Gangnam Jin. Like, that's a really good support line. But Moth Shu, I think, is arguably the best support line in the league. You could argue that the Shocks is better with FD God and most likely Violet, potentially Twilight, depending on the meta, or even if it's just Violet and Twilight. But this is a really good team, the Gladiators, and they've already shown to be a team that has had very good performances. This is a team that even when they weren't that good last season, like they had a pretty weak roster last season, this is a team that struggled against the Florida Mayhem last season, and they came out and destroyed them in the Valiant Winter Ball. Once again, it's a preseason tournament. It only tells you so much, only means so much. But I really think this Gladiators team has a ton of potential, and I think they are genuinely one of the best teams in the league. I don't think you can overstate how important Moth is and how good Moth is as a player, and how much his success will elevate this Gladiators team. But those are my thoughts on the LA Gladiators. Let me know your own thoughts on the team in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing for more content like this in the future. But that is all from me. Thank you for watching. I hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.